all spending time with us this morning. We're thrilled you're here, and we hope that you have the opportunity to learn and discover new things about yourself and where you want to go in this discussion. So thank you all. And Kendall, here you go.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to see your faces. And thank you to AWIT for, I think, being brave and bold, really. The topic is a tough one. Women under-mentored, over-mentored, under-sponsored. It's a brave one. We're all learning as we go. And that's the purpose of today, is to really, talk about our experiences as women, as men, as sponsors, as mentees and sponsees. So that's what we're going to do today, is squeeze as much out of this hour as possible. So I'm the CEO of Untapped AI, and our absolute passion, we are a coaching company and we are passionate about systemic change. And the most, I suppose, significant thing for all of us is that we want more and more women at senior positions and more women of colour at senior positions. So we work with some big American brands and other brands to really help accelerate women, but really look at the power structures and how we can change those within companies to enable women to have more networks and more power to get to those positions. So I think it is a brave subject. I hope everyone here can learn that we can all work on doing better and we can all work on helping. And that really is the mission of AWIT. It's a brilliant mission. So I'd just like to start with some rules. If everybody could, if they can, put their videos on so we can all be present with each other. It makes such a difference to connect to somebody's face. We are going to have breakout rooms. And so give you all a chance to share your stories. So what goes on tour has to stay on tour. And so that means any stories you hear, please feel free to share, but please don't share outside. It is a safe space, and that's what we're good at, and that's what we'd like to maintain. And the last thing is the chat function. We've run many of these before, and it's just sometimes the chat can be distracting. Please do write things in the chat, but we won't be responding. We respond post the event, but we don't want it to distract in this time. So feel free, but we will not respond within this session. So I'd like to start. Brendan, would you mind just sharing the slides with the structure of today, number 2? This is the structure. So we really are going to move on to the introduction to sponsorship, and we have a video to show you. And then you will have a chance to share your stories from whichever angle and whatever your perspective is in the breakout rooms. And then we're going to move on to our lovely panel, and they've got so much to bring and really add to your thinking as well. We all know, and there was stuff in the news over here in the UK today, that the speed of change is so slow. It's shocking. And we just wanted to put some of these as all 2022 stats. Only 1 in 4 C-suite women, but what's even more shocking is only 1 in 5 of those 1 in 4 women are a woman of colour. That's pretty shocking. And I just thought the next one was fascinating, again, from recent research, is how many men come in at an entry level, and yet that's doubled when they get to the C-suite, and it's exactly the other way around for women. And then I'm sure post-pandemic that so many women are leaving the corporate environments. It's the biggest, exodus that we've ever seen. And I think the last stat, I suppose I've left to last, but you can have the greatest hiring policy promoting women to directors, but for every 1 woman that's promoted and hired and promoted, 2 are leaving. So that is like, as we call in the UK, a colander, but you call in the US a sieve. That's not working. So the next slide, please, Brendan. So we really are passionate about the need for sponsorship, the need for women to access the networks and the power. And women have a lot more mentors than men, but the interesting thing is that there is no effect on promotion. There might be effects on the advice and the relationships that women build from mentoring, but the research shows really clearly there is no effect on promotion from women having mentors. But there is in sponsors. And this is the difference here. And it really is about power and helping change the system rather than helping us get on in the system. It's about changing the system. That is the biggest difference. And the responsibility is shared as opposed to it being on fixing the women. And the other thing I think is really interesting on that last bit there is it's much more public, a sponsor. That's their job, to be public about you as a woman. And so it is a spectrum. You can be a mentor, and I'm sure you've had people that are mentors that have moved into sponsors and vice versa. But what I think this really helps with is show it is a spectrum. And on one end, the mentor is a much more private relationship, much more individual, and much more about managing the current system. Whereas a sponsor is there to help change the system, and that sponsor has to take risks in giving up their own political capital and their own network. And so let's show you a video that we've done to really kind of bring that to life.
Any help would be great, yeah.
Okay, so some of the things that came up, particularly, the data shows that you spend about 75% of the time talking.
Okay.
About 35% of the time.
Wow.
And also just thinking about the type of questions that you were asking her. And as I say that, what's coming up for you? I can see the real feeling.
Yeah, I certainly on that. I did feel that I was talking a lot, but I suppose I found Isabel was a little bit reluctant, and maybe, and I was trying to, build that confidence in her and trying to G her up, but I suppose maybe I didn't leave much space for it. So I think I meant well, but in reflection, I did feel a bit tired afterwards, as if I did all the work.
There you go. I'm so glad you framed it that way, as if you did all the work. And, that points to this space. The other sort of data that we picked up was sort of average scores around your confidence and adaptability in that session. And, confidence, a bit like what you've described just now, that you started to struggle. And so your confidence maybe dipped a little bit in not being sure, well, what am I actually doing? Am I helping her? Yeah. And adaptability was also very much high on being grounded. Your intention, like you said, spot on. You've taken up courage to choose to be a sponsor for somebody else. It sounds like somewhere in the middle, you almost lost your way or weren't clear on how do I do this? When we talk about you spending sort of 70% of the time talking or 75% of the time, there was a lot of instructions. Read this, do this, have you checked this, do you know this? And I think thinking about mentoring, mentoring kind of fills a gap. But in terms of sponsoring, as you know, Isabel was already identified as capable to go to the next level. So there's no gaps there. What could you be doing is what we wanted to think about. So it's more about partnering with her, with open doors, give her opportunities perhaps to shine for other people to see her.
Yeah, that's interesting you should say that, because one of the things I did at the start, I was saying you have to get out there and get noticed. And we talked about how I got over my confidence in regards to how I felt self-conscious about my sort of accent. I was in a you know, and I said that basically I was quite open in meetings, and I was given opportunities by those around me. And I suppose I didn't stop to think about how maybe what I could do on that score. I suppose yeah, I suppose how does she evolve if she's not given opportunities?
How do I propel her? How do I partner with her to introduce her to the next level? And as I say that, what ideas are coming to your mind on how to do that?
I suppose it did cross my mind a little bit, then I discounted it because I was thinking, well, you know, am I showing favoritism? And then I thought, well, hold on, how can Isabel shine if she's not given the opportunity? So I suppose my reluctance in doing that, because I felt that, but like you say, she's got to be given the opportunity to show other people what I'm seeing.
Women do less well in that mentoring. They need someone to open the door, sadly, but that's the reality. And so what you, I guess maybe from your own experience of being mentored, you mentioned something about your accent and seeing the benefit of being able to go to the next level and being supported to do that is slightly different what you're doing for Isabel, who's female, which is actually opening the door, opening it for her, walking through it with her. And so a close question or a statement is you're going, a more co-created, partnering, you know, peer level, elevating you is, here's an idea. What do you think? How can you fit in? Yeah, how can we work on this together so that you can shine? How do you feel about it? What do you need from me to make this a success? So those kind of questions.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. It, you know, it makes a lot of sense. I did come out feeling, I hope I didn't show it inside the session, but I was maybe feeling a bit frustrated, thinking, come on, I'm giving you all these gifts here, Isabel, you know. But there was a reluctance there, and so no, that makes complete sense.
So I hope you enjoyed that. Can you hear me? Kate, can you put your thumb up? You can hear me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I love the last bit. I'm giving you all these gifts here, Isabel. That was just, as Cissy said, it's a powerful video. It really is. So if we can move to the next one. The next slide, Brendan. Yeah, so it's your turn now. We're interested in you. You're here to share. So have you ever been a sponsor, a mentor, or both, or on the receiving end? I'm sure you have. And if you haven't, what does that feel like? But we want you to share. So if we could get into groups now and share our experiences, it's 10 minutes, the breakout room, and we'll give you a little warning before, and then we'll come back and we'll start our panel. So yes. Hopefully we've given you enough to begin with, but yeah, please share. So Brendan's going to break us into rooms.
Yeah, just a couple of seconds.
Oh, sorry, we're ahead of you, Brendan.
Just making sure I've got enough people in the right rooms.
You need a bit of time, Brendan. We can.
Just a couple of seconds, yeah.
Kate, what did you think of that video? Be interesting, your thoughts.
It was fascinating to hear what was going on in his head of let me fill up the space, or let me keep going, or I'm giving you these things. And I often think of how becoming comfortable with silence can be an opportunity for growth for a lot of folks. And it felt like the coach was very perceptive in how she was coaching him to understand a different point of view or what somebody else might need. I'm curious what other takeaways folks had.
I can open rooms if everyone is ready.
Perfect.
Yeah. Trisha's got a great comment, and I would like to know what the gifts were. That's very good, Trisha. Oh, that's great. Okay, are we going into the rooms, Brendan?
Welcome back, everyone.
Hey, Brendan.
Hope 10 minutes was long enough.
I hope you all enjoyed that. That was really interesting, really, really interesting. And notice we didn't record those groups because that was what goes on tour stays on tour. So that was definitely a space. It felt like it should have been much, much longer. We have to think about that for next time, Kate. So now I have the absolute honor of bringing our panel members up here with me. So if we could bring up Ali and Jason, that would be absolutely wonderful. That's it. Welcome. All right.
Hey, Ali.
Hello.
And is Jason on? Can you put 3 along? Oh, there we go. We have our panel. And we have someone joining our panel, Eva, who's going to come along when she's ready. She's just, she's got something else to do, but she's definitely coming. So I know that for a fact. So welcome to our lovely panelists. So I've got Ali, who, well, Ali, do you want to do a quick intro of you? 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Ali Kennard, working for Accenture as a global talent strategist, and super passionate about I&D, and particularly around improving gender in the engineering and manufacturing space.
Lovely. And Jason Bizzle. Oh, Jason, happy that you're here. Lovely. Just quick intro from you.
So been in the tech industry for 30 years, as this is a tech audience, Databricks, Business Objects, SAP, ClickTech. I was like the go-to GM for Asia Pacific for the last 12 years. So they would come to me and I would set them up and launch them in Asia. And now I am listening.
Listening, what a lovely. And then he paused.
Because my daughter told me, she prepped me. Lily said, listen more.
Lily said, listen. There's the name of the book, Jason, that you're going to write. Lily said, listen. Beautiful. Like that. So we are going to have different lanes for you all, and we've talked about that. So very much Ali is an expert at running sponsorship mentoring programs, and she has got loads of insight in the skill sets, which came across in that video of what are the skills and how can mentor sponsors build those skills. Jason, I think his lane today is how to be a better sponsor. He's very open about his own journey of what he's trying to shift. So very vulnerable and brave of Jason. And Eva, who's coming in, very much is a female sponsor, very senior female sponsor, again, with lots of male sponsors, because that's what typically they are. And her own experiences of kind of climbing the corporate ladder, but her own experiences, good, bad, sponsors, mentors, when she comes in. So we're going to split this panel into 3 sections. One is stories. The first 10 minutes will take some stories. You've all got your own stories. And then the second bit is insights. What have you learned from those? And then I'd love to just focus the last section on takeaways. So if we do that, stories, insights, takeaways, we'll have a nice structure so that we can keep to that. So let's start with Jason. Stories. Just your own stories of your own experience of being a mentor sponsor within the tech industry.
So anyone who's on the call, this is a sincere and genuine offer. If you ever want to ask me for a tip or trick on this, coming from a man's perspective, I'm happy to answer that as honestly as I possibly can. And on the breakout, I started by sharing that every single job promotion that I've had, and I've had some pretty senior roles in the tech industry, I directly asked for a sponsor. And each time I did that, I did it in trust and confidence because they were men. I looked through before doing this, I looked through all of the recommendations I got on LinkedIn. I got 61 recommendations, 5 of them are women. That's not right. How many bosses did I have that were women? 1 in a 30-year career. So the sponsoring is different to mentoring. The sponsor is when I'm not in the room, Les, Steve, Mike, I can name them all now. When I'm not in the room, will you stand up and say, Jason is the guy, for whatever it is? It doesn't have to be a job promotion. And I've directly tested that and asked for it. And interesting thing to the coaching piece, the mentoring piece, that's about me. I will not be anyone's mentor here, just to be very clear, because I don't want to share my tips and tricks and my gifts to you. But I will happily explain what happens from my perspective, actually what's happening in that closed door. And the key to it, I did this last week with a lady at AWS, who's a very good friend of mine. And she's gone for a job promotion. She's at Google, sorry, not AWS. And I asked her just to ask the guy, because there was 3 guys who were running the panel, to ask them directly, would they be a sponsor for you? And she did it, and she got the job. So it works. Just, will you sponsor me? I think is the simple story I want to sort of share with you. I've done it throughout my entire career.
Okay, that's off to a good start. Love it. Great start, Jason. Ali, some stories from your perspective of running these programs.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a kind of personal story, and then of course, you know, I run these, and I think from a personal angle, and I think, you know, I don't want to stereotype here, but I think a lot of people, not just women, but more so women, struggle with the confidence side. You know, we are more than capable, but we struggle kind of advocating for ourselves, pushing a little bit, and saying we think we are ready for something or deserve something. And that has followed me, I would say, throughout my career, until I reached a point where I met a lady at my place of work who just asked questions, you know, as Jason said, and it was a real revelation for me. You know, she asked questions and she listened. Importantly, though, she then took action on my behalf. So she provided me with an opportunity that has since then helped me kind of go on this trajectory. So I felt like I was kind of flatlining a little bit. And then, you know, I met this woman who really helped me. Critically, though, she was in a decision-making capability. You know, not everybody you meet is always in that decision-making capability. Sometimes it's about finding those connections and doing it that way. And I think, you know, lots of people bring their own baggage. For me, as a northerner, with a really northern accent, and I know there's a lot of people from the States here, so this might not mean too much, but I'm from a place called Grimsby in the north of England. No one ever comes here, no one passes through, we're right on the coast. And, you know, when I went down to London, there were all these people who were talking about this trendy new tennis club that they'd joined in Shoreditch, or some funky new restaurant that they'd gone to when they were open, or how they traveled Asia in their, you know, summer, or whatever it might be. And that to me was a different world. And I had to really think about how I changed myself to fit in. And what I learned is that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You have to be your authentic self, but you have to seek out those people who appreciate that and value that. That's kind of my personal story. And then I guess that's led me to a place now where I'm working on developing and executing and continuing all the time to learn when I'm creating these sponsorship programs for women in industry at Accenture.
Really good, really good. I love the whole. You're in an environment that just feels so alien, so alien.
For so long,
Jason,
people asked me, where are you from? And I said, Lincolnshire, which is the county. So nobody could pinpoint Grimsby.
You're covering. Yeah. So Jason, to go back to you and stories, could you pick out a story where you could have done it better? If you go back in time, when you would wish you'd have done it better.
So this is maybe me being a bit, a bit open, but it's there are women that I worked with in the tech industry that wanted to have promotions, and I can think of two, and I won't name their names right now, who were extraordinarily capable, competent, technically actually, very strong as well. And when it came to closed door promotion discussion, I didn't put my hand up for them. And there's something deep underneath that, which is risk, because what happened in that closed door discussion, and in one of the instances there was another woman in the room as well, so we're predominantly male oriented. What happens is that decisions like that, of course, get made up, by spreadsheets and, capabilities and star ratings and all the wonderful things that HR systems allow you to do. But actually what happens is, am I going to look stupid? Is this going to go against me? Can this person survive in this world? And in the tech industry, it's pretty brutal. And then I'm talking about 1993 onwards, right? So huge amounts of tequila, huge amounts of let's go boys, and I'm just calling it out for you. So I look back at that and I say, that was pretty pathetic. Why didn't I sponsor them? And I think it was mainly because of my own weakness in risk. And I don't think that I was necessarily a weak person. It's just that it is a weakness to go, well, Bob's safer because Bob knows John and they go to play football together, and that kind of stuff. And it's not about a network. It's something that's unwritten, and I'm just, I think of two people.
And it's about what you're saying is actually putting yourself on the line, isn't it? That at that point.
But if they'd ever asked, can I just say it? But Kendall, if they'd ever asked me, would I sponsor them? Then I've committed to it.
Yes,
then I would have.
Really
if they'd have just asked me, and I'm not saying that was their fault. I'm being very open about my role in that. But if they had asked me, I'm the person that would have said yes, and I would have committed to that.
But you
and
had
then in that
meeting,
meeting, that commitment to that individual, and that one of those was an exceptionally talented person. But yeah,
it's really good. Ali, it would be really good in terms of the stories about sponsorship programs. What are the things that shift it? What are the things that make a difference? What's your experience of those stories of those?
Well, in our breakout rooms, we were talking a bit about sponsors, and there is no manual. There is no just do these 10 things, tick these boxes, and you will be successful. And I think that's really hard, right? For if you're asked to be a sponsor, you want to be able to do all the things to help to elevate that person and help advance that person. But just because you're more senior doesn't mean you're an effective sponsor. It is a real skill to be an effective sponsor, just as it's a real skill to be an effective people lead. And so what we're seeing is working very well is when you build what we're calling like an ecosystem of support around people. And traditionally that's always been around the person who's being sponsored. And what we heard from our females, particularly our mid-career level females, is, I feel this extra burden. Like I always have to take this coaching course or go on this mentoring program. And, that is above and beyond, on top of my day job that I'm really grafting at. I'm really working hard and I'm getting good results. But it's on top of everything. And maybe you have a family, or maybe you have some caring responsibilities for parents, or whatever it is. Whilst my male counterpart actually is building his network, naturally, organically growing those relationships with his leaders and our clients. And so I think it's really important that we create this this attitude that it's not a woman's problem, it's everybody's problem. And we have to kind of create this ecosystem of support and build infrastructures that help support those relationships. So, you know, we can't just expect sponsors to be good sponsors just because they're senior, you know. And I think we also have to acknowledge that some people will just never be good sponsors. And so that's my big kind of feeling around this, is that in order to drive real value for everybody, it has to engage everybody, and it has to support the sponsor to be as successful as they can be. And honestly, what we see is that you know, they get so much out of it as well. You know, they report that they've thought about things differently than they would before, and that's helped them in different conversations, or actually it's broadened their network. You know, that they get lots out of it as well.
So that brings us on, Ali, to the insights. So it would be really good, Jason, where are the biggest insights for you now, where you are in your life? Now you're a coach, a sponsor, mainly within the tech industry and within hypergrowth companies. What insights would you like to share from all of those experiences and where you are now in this space? Well, you said one very clearly. It was about, you know,
yeah, I think it's I don't want to lecture or, you know, explain this to you. I think the first thing is that distinction between mentorship and sponsorship, and male, female, however people identify themselves is not irrelevant, but it's actually the focal point is the maturity of the individual, and mentoring is quite an immature level. I believe sponsorship is more mature. So if you think about leadership, management, the sort of the director, the leader, the coach, the servant, and the facilitator, there's a spectrum there. To be a facilitator as a leader, as a manager, is really, really difficult. You have to be very confident in your own abilities. And so that...
Can I ask, Jason, sorry to interrupt you there, but when was your aha moment from the mentor to the sponsor? And what I mean, you talked about your daughter a bit.
Yeah, so Lily, pretty much Lily said to me, Dad, you need to listen. And I went, well, I do listen. What do you want? What do we need to fix? Like, what's going on? Like, come on, I get it. Yeah, can we move on? And then slowing down for me, for me personally, and actually listening is hard, but it is important. And that was a sort of transition. And then actually Joanna Littman's book, and that's what she said. So I started learning and studying, and I've been really talking to lots of people, listening to lots of people, not just any gender or any identification. And what's amazing about it is that every single person it's possible to change this, because it's about maturity of your own individual self-awareness and the awareness of the person that you're speaking with. Some people are direct, some people are indirect. So reading books like Erin Meyer's Culture Map, you know, indirect and direct language communications. And so I think for me, it was about educating me. If that I don't know if that helps you. It's not, I'm just sharing my own, like, it's me being educated. Actually, I've got this wrong. And it was a really sad moment, actually, because Lily was right, and I thought I was right, and I just needed to slow down and listen. And that's not about sponsorship. But to understand the difference between sponsorship and mentorship, I had to slow down and study it and say, what is the difference then? And this lady in Australia at Google, she got a promotion because I listened and I said, ask him this question. I didn't give her any advice. I said, ask him very directly. And it worked for her. And I think that, I'm not sure I'm helping you as a panelist.
It's all good stuff. It's really good.
Yeah.
Ali, insights. You've said some of them. I thought the piece that you said was brilliant was the skills. And some people aren't, if they're not up for it, you know, how do they pull out of it? We had in our panel somebody talk about how do you maintain the relationship too, and how does that relationship grow? On our spectrum, we put that it's got to be an authentic relationship so that people can feel, you know, if it was me as the sponsee, that I can feel I could say, I need some help with, you know, whatever it is, commercial acumen. I need some help with what's the insights on how those relationships are built and, yeah, you know, developed, so that you can be honest. They've got to be honest, haven't they, those relationships?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it comes back again to this, making sure that we're skilling our sponsors, because it's a, you know, Jason, you're right, it's a skill to listen. It really is a skill. It's a skill to be mindful. It's a skill to step back and try and put yourself in somebody else's shoes and not always apply your own lens to something and kind of then jump to the, you know, the let's go fix it. I mean, especially in the world that I work in, you know, in the consulting, tech consulting kind of world. And so I think in terms of maintaining those relationships, and quite honestly, it's hard, because I think one of the reasons why women get over mentored and under sponsored is exactly what Jason said that happened in that meeting is, am I, you know, the sponsor sitting there thinking, am I willing to spend my political capital on this person? Do I know them well enough? Can I vouch for them? Will this hurt me down the line? Will I look stupid, to use Jason's words? And I think that comes from not closely knowing a person necessarily. But herein, you know, is the challenge, is that what we also see is that people naturally tend to sponsor people who are just like them. And so when we think, looking at your stats at the beginning of this call, how many men are in those C-suite positions or in those really senior positions, it's self-perpetuating. And so the challenge really is bridging that gap, you know, and how do we get to a point where we can advocate for people who, when we first meet them, potentially we don't know them so well. And it comes down to listening. It comes down to mindfulness. It comes down to being engaged and having those conversations.
It absolutely does. This is a brilliant thing, but it is self-perpetuating. Eva, welcome to our panel. I'm really grateful that you got here. It's wonderful you're here. So this is Jason, Ali. We've kind of set the scene. We've done some stories. We're doing insights, but it would be lovely. I know you've just literally come in, but for everybody, the introduction to Eva is, she really is a female sponsor at a senior level alongside lots of male sponsors, and also had her own experience of sponsorship. So it would be great, Eva, if you don't mind, we'll go backwards a little bit just to some of your own stories that you could highlight, you know, some insights.
Well, first of all, thank you, and my apologies. Kendall knows I had a medical appointment that could not be moved, so I'm very grateful for allowing that accommodation. I just caught the tail end of your points, and they were so well stated about familiarity, comfort. You know, as Kendall said so well, I have been in a senior role for many years, started in technology and in consumer businesses. And the idea that those who are making decisions about succession, promotion, pay, you know, advanced opportunities, special assignments, often are human. You know, this idea of mentorship versus sponsorship has an action orientation in the difference. So you can be a wonderful mentor, but when Kendall and I chatted, I had many mentors that gated me. And Kendall said to me, is that an American phrase?
Yeah,
Jason?
what's that term? Tell everybody about gating. I think it's such a good term. Come on.
I see Jason smiling. You know what I mean.
Got you. I get you.
Okay.
Yes. And sometimes I think I was assigned mentors. I'm going to go because I was perceived that I needed to be gated. And what surprised me was that it wasn't necessarily male or female. There were women that were my mentors that had very different life experiences. So one example I was sharing with Kendall last night is that the idea of a senior woman who'd be a CEO with 6 children was not that typical in technology in the 80s. And so often, if I were being mentored by someone who had a certain point of view about family, I won't get into any names, but one of my mentors was a male CEO. And as soon as I had my daughter, he said, well, you know, I hope you're not aspiring for that top seat anymore. Your priority has got to be your family. And I said, well, why do you say that? He goes, well, I would never have my children raised by nannies. And I said, well, you know, my family has a very different point of view. We have an incredible extended family network of care, and we're very comfortable with our childcare and a dual career family. And I'd like to be given a shot. But back to the idea of his mental model was once you're a parent and you're a female, that you lose some availability or capacity or responsiveness. And that was perhaps self-gating to him. It was extremely gating to me. So the idea of finding ways to have him get comfortable that I could go on that trip that might be 5 days, it might be 12 days because we're traveling throughout Asia and, you know, there's a lot of unknowns. And so I think the meta ideas, Kendall, that I want to share is mentoring has tremendous pros. Watch for gating, watch for that familiarity issue of you have to live your life the way I did.
And can I, because you missed a bit that Ali said that really links to this, was just that most people would choose a mentor. We have this in our group, but a mentor or sponsor like them. And it's that different lived experience, isn't it, that you're talking about, that Ali's talking about, which requires a lot more hard work, a lot more, as Jason says, the listening. And you use some, being mindful, thinking that someone's lived experience is going to be different to yours. It requires a very different skill set than being with somebody just like you.
Well, and thank you, Ali, for making that point, because the reason I'm so passionate about sponsorship versus mentorship is sponsorship often requires going to individuals who are exactly the opposite of you, but they may have the power to affect your career or your future. And it can be hard for them and for you. Yeah. And so, what I've learned, first of all, when you're an only, first woman on boards, a female on a 300-person all-male team. Again, luckily these days we don't see it that often, but you may be an individual, a woman of color, and find yourself in that only spot. That you automatically want to find a way to build bridges to sponsors. And if you don't know what people are thinking and you don't know what that running tape is, you never have a chance to address it. So in some ways, mentors who tell you why they are gating you, and it's often intended to be helpful or just a little tip, or I would never do that, or why would you want that? You now know what their holdback is. So you can address it. And now you want to convert them to active sponsors. And I don't want to dominate these last few minutes, but some of my best mentors have been people that I had high conflict with, that once we addressed whatever that issue was, we moved from gated mentoring to active sponsorship. And had I not known why they were gating me, I never could address the elephant on the table.
Oh, that is juicy.
And
so
that's
the elephant on the table is the gate, and what is the gate? Yeah.
And that's why I've told Kendall, I love your Untapped name, because what happens when people are gated? You don't get the best of them. The company doesn't get the best, and that individual doesn't learn and grow either. So, I was complimenting Kendall for, being such a role model in so many ways. And I was saying, you're the second CEO I know with over 5 children. And I think we need to talk about that more, that anyone who would perceive you can't be a founder or a CEO because you have a large family hasn't met you. And one of my other favorite colleagues, Jennifer Reynolds, is the new CEO of Women Corporate Directors. And just seeing how vibrant capable individuals are that have different life and family profiles.
I've had to lock the children upstairs, just so you know, everybody, because otherwise it would not be this quiet.
But I stopped because I can see Jason and Allie have made.
So let's look, we've got
points.
a couple of minutes to finish up. Let's finish on time. Takeaways. I'd like a takeaway from each of you to finish, but yeah, Jason, what's your takeaway? Whether it's for you personally or to everybody else. Come on.
I hope I'm not going to steal Eva's takeaway, but I'm going to use the word that she used, which is mentor. And applying mentor models requires a certain level of sophistication. And what I would suggest is that in any organization, small or large, is that you challenge the learning development organization of that to think about coaching, servant leadership, facilitative leadership, sponsorship. Those are the words that I would go, if you are really going deep on the organization, those behaviors are in those words.
Good, really good. Thank you. Ali, takeaways.
So I'm going to speak to the people on the call who might be seeking some sponsorship or thinking about, how am I going to get where I need to be? And I just want to take everybody back to that slide, that scale that Kendall showed at the beginning, because I truly believe that sponsorship is a spectrum of different kinds and degrees of support, mentoring being one of them. It has its place. But as Jason said earlier, maybe that's kind of on the, if it's a scale of maturity, that's on one end and sponsorship is on the other. So I would say, yes, actively seek out sponsors. Keep in mind that when you're doing that, you're asking someone to use their hard-earned political capital to advocate for you. And so therefore you need people in influential positions, you need people in decision-making capabilities. So question to you all, who is the most powerful person in your remit, who knows your work, who can vouch for you? If those around you don't, or if those around you who know your work and would vouch for you aren't in those decision-making capabilities, then think about the rest of the spectrum. How might they connect you to somebody who is? How might they give you an opportunity to do some work for somebody who's in a decision-making capability? And I think the point is here is to strategize it. Unfortunately, it doesn't just come to us. And yes, there are these wonderful programs, but we too kind of have to strategize and almost create our little people map. That would be my takeaway.
Beautiful. Got to work at thinking this through. Yeah, really good, really good. Eva, let's finish on you, my love. Last but not least.
So ditto to my colleagues. And the one other thing I pick up on both your points is the idea of a two-way street. I once used a phrase with an individual who said, why the heck would I ever hire you? And I said, because I can take you places you cannot go without me, and I will prove it to you. And I did. So the other thing that's great about sponsorship is it's a two-way street. And the idea of reverse mentoring is now so common. But Ali, you know this, in professional services firms, you're only as strong as the team that wants to follow you. And people will not follow you if you are not an active sponsor. And so the idea that when you're approaching someone trying to build that comfort, familiarity, that you're saying, I've looked at you, sponsor. I think I could help you with digital support. I can help you with reaching a new audience, tapping a new customer base. And that's been the most fun, is it turns it from, an obligation or a chore, or I have to have lunch, or to, I can't wait to talk to, I have a number of 20-something sponsors. I can't wait to talk to them about these 2 or 3 things I'm struggling with, getting the language right, getting the digital right, being contemporary, because it's just not my current lived experience. Oh. So that would be my final point is, I said to Kendall yesterday, if you can leave a sponsorship relationship with, I feel seen, safe, and heard, and that people see my strengths, I'm safe to be who I am and hear tough feedback and accept it responsibly. And then I'm heard for all that I can do today and tomorrow. Now you have a winning sponsorship relationship, but put a bow on it with, make sure that person leaves with, wow, thank goodness I had Allie or I had Jason as my sponsee. I'm better today because of it. And I learned these 3 things. So it's a win-win 2-way.
Yeah, the seen, safe and heard works on both sides, Eva, doesn't it? It really does. Beautiful ending. Brendan, if you could just put up the slide. Thank you to our panelists. For any further information, you can contact us. Kate, and you can contact me directly. And Kate, if we can just finish on you, just to round up, would be lovely.
Of course. Well, thank you all once again for joining. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you, Untapped AI, for pulling this together. On behalf, to take some words from what Eva shared, we're wanting to create a world where women's careers are accelerated, where you have the options available to you that you want, and also where everybody feels safe, seen, and heard. So thank you for taking the time to learn with us all today. If you want to learn more about us and our work at AWIT, you can visit us online at Advancing Women in Tech. We would love your support and for you to continue learning with us. So thank you all once again. It's been a joy to spend time with you today.
Oh, thank you, AWIT, and thank you to Kate and the panelists. Big round of applause to you 3. Absolutely insightful. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your day, evening.